right.
Good
Hello,
evening.
hello.
Hey
All the
guys.
way.
Good evening.
Thanks for joining in. Oh my God, it's been
Yeah,
a while, Hancock.
yes, it's been a while that I actually seen you as well. Oh, well,
Yeah, I think like
I managed to actually go to KL and actually met some
right.
friends, but it's
Okay.
always good to actually see more friends. And the thing is that I purposely actually cut short my KL trip to come back for this particular
Mm-hmm.
exciting session.
I know.
Well, I guess that maybe we can actually just quickly just run through what do we actually have in store today.
Okay, all
Um,
right. And hello, good evening, everyone, and welcome for tonight's session. And again, thank you, Hancock MYCC, for bringing me in to host this amazing
you
co-host
are also MYCC, so everyone is MYCC.
admin. So, anyways, for tonight's session, we actually have two amazing and talented people. We have the award-winning writer, Charles Ardai, and as well Ipo-born Malaysian
Ipo
artist.
based as well.
Ipo-based. I'm sorry,
Yes.
Ipo-based artist, Ang Hor Kheng. Did I get it right? So,
Yes,
yeah.
Ang Hor Kheng.
So,
So
without
we will actually
yeah,
bring in our guests. One is actually streaming all the way from Manhattan, so which is
right.
actually probably just below our feet at the other side of our earth. While Ang will be actually based out of Ipoh and trying to will stream in, and both of them are actually creators. And Charles is actually a writer for Gun Honey, while Ang will be the artist. So, hi Charles.
Hello, thank you for having us.
Good
on.
morning to you.
It's wonderful here. It's a bright, sunny morning in New York City, and I'm glad to be on with you guys.
All right,
Yep.
awesome.
And we
And
have
next,
Ang, which is actually from
Hi.
Ipoh.
Hi,
Hello.
hello.
Good evening.
Morning, sir.
Thank you. Good evening to you.
Right. So, what have we got in store today, Hancock?
Well, we can actually start talking about how. I mean, let's start it from the beginning, right? How
Right.
Gun Honey came to be, but before that, how does Hard Case Crime come to be?
Oh gosh, that's a 20-year-old story. I'll make it really short though, because 20 years.
But
is too long.
I thought you're reprinting some things from the 30s or 40s, so probably it will
That's how
be
we
even further
started.
than that, like
Yeah,
90
you're not
years
wrong.
ago.
You know, we started publishing novels, traditional novels, with one painting on the cover, but otherwise just words on page. And what we did was look for old books that had been published originally in the 30s, 40s, 50s, maybe 60s, even 70s.
Wow.
But you're talking about books that have been unavailable for at least 50 years. And
Right.
we would bring them back. And so I went to my shelves. You can see some of my shelves behind me. These are magazines, but I have shelves like this full of novels too. And I
Okay.
picked out my favorite books
Those
by
are
writers.
are they museum grade?
Yes, well, some of them are, some of them are in terrible
Wow.
condition. So these are the ones you see here are all Ellery Queen's Mystery Magazine. That was a magazine started in 1941, and it's still published today. So the more recent issues are
Awesome.
probably really good quality. The old issues are in terrible shape, but you can still read them. They crumble a little.
So you lose some pages every time that you
lose
them,
it.
right?
That's right. There was a Paul Auster novel about a man who was stuck in an igloo up somewhere near the Arctic Circle, and he
Okay.
couldn't get out because of a snowdrift, and there was only so much space between his mouth and the roof of the igloo. And he said every time he exhaled, another layer of ice was created on the underside of the roof, and so every breath would bring him closer to his mortality. And it's a little bit like that with these magazines. Every time you flip a page, a bit more crumbles off, and you get closer to death. Sorry to be grim about it. So anyway, that's how we started, and we published our first 66 books with a company that's sadly no longer with us called Dorchester Publishing. They were a terrific publishing company, but they went out of business about a decade ago. And at that point, we switched to working with a company called Titan, which does both books and comics. Dorchester had only done books, traditional books. Titan also does comics. Titan's a terrific company. It's based in England. And the people who run Titan, it's a family-run organization. It's not some big corporate entity. And they said to me at one point, would you also like to do comics? Not just traditional books, but comics. And I love the idea. I've been reading comics since I was a 7-year-old boy, maybe even younger. I don't remember. And I said, yes, let's try to do some crime comics. And we did probably a dozen different crime titles. And I promised them I would write one myself. But I was so busy editing other people's crime comics that I didn't get around to writing my own scripts for years, 5, 6 years. And then finally I sat down and wrote Gun Honey. And did a worldwide search for the perfect artist to illustrate it, and that's how I met the man who's sitting between the two of you in that stack of windows, who is an amazing, stunning, phenomenal artist, and it's a privilege to work with him. And that's where Gun Honey came from originally.
Well, that's really the part that actually surprises us the most when we actually heard about Gun Honey, and when there was a mention of an Asian name, and then when I actually started Googling and tried to look him out, it seems like he's almost like there's no background of him. He's almost like a mystery man that just suddenly just appeared. So that's the part that I'm actually quite curious. How do you actually come about finding him? Because even we are actually probably just living like 100 kilometers from Ipoh, but we can't even know there's such a talent at Ipoh town.
Well, that's part of the wonderful thing of the internet age, where previously the two of us might never have met, might never have known each other, but today there are online forums for artists and writers and so on. There's one called ArtStation, which is a very good forum where you can post your art and have comments and discussions, but you can also let people know if you're going to be doing a new book and you are trying to recruit talented people to help work with it, whether that's art or lettering or colors or what have you. And I think I posted, I don't remember exactly what I wrote, but I said we were doing a new comic book, and I was looking for someone who was excited about illustrating it. And although the main character in the book grew up in Singapore and her mother was Malaysian, I didn't set out necessarily to hire an artist who was based in Malaysia. It didn't even occur to me. But when the submissions came in, and we probably heard from 100 or more different artists, the work that your work just stood out as the best by far. And then when I looked where you were and you were in Ipoh, Malaysia, I said, this is perfect. The character is from there. And that means not only will the art be beautiful, but it'll also be authentic. It'll look right for that part of the world when she has her flashbacks to growing up. So I was very excited.
Right. I mean,
well, probably we can actually pull out some of his artwork. I believe I had a chat with Ang.
Right.
And he actually mentioned that he did this test page, which is actually the first page of the Gun Honey, to actually prove that he has the chop to actually do the work. Is that correct?
Okay, so we're looking at what are we looking at here? So
yeah, looking at the first page of Gun Honey, I believe.
Very first page. Right. Coming in just real quick. For those that's just joined us, thank you and hello. And if you have any questions for Charles and Ang here, just drop it into the comments. And we'll be pulling out questions, and so that we can just have a bit of a chat with them. And we've got some here.
Just know that the session doesn't necessarily be just between the two hosts asking questions. Any audience that is actually live, if you actually find something that you're interested to know more about Charles as well as Ang, don't ask about where they live, the exact address and whatnot, but anything that is actually relating to the Gun Honey franchise, or any way that they can actually support the series, just go ahead and actually leave it at the comment section.
All right. I just have one quick question though. I mean, we're talking about where the main character here, who is Joanna Tan, and she's, with Singapore and Malaysian roots. Why these two places?
It's an interesting question, and the answer is sort of peculiar.
Okay.
I came up with the title Gun Honey because I was having lunch with a friend of mine who's Korean named Uni Hong. And Uni wanted to write a book for us, but was reluctant. She's a journalist, and she's known for her nonfiction. And she was reluctant to write a lurid, sexy pulp novel under her real name. And I said, when I wrote my first two novels, I wrote them under a pseudonym that I made up as an anagram of my name. I took all the letters in my name, rearranged them, and came up with Richard Alias. And she said, well, that works for you because you have a lot of good letters in your name. What kind of anagram can you make out of Uni Hong, which is EUNYHONG? And I thought about it and came up with Gun Honey. And Gun Honey, that's where the title came from. Gun Honey would be a terrible pseudonym. You can't write a book and sign it Gun Honey. That doesn't make any sense. The title, it was good. And when I tried to figure out what book would go with that title, in honor of Uni, I decided that the main character should come from Asia, but it doesn't have to be Korea specifically. And I thought about where else might be interesting. The two people who own Titan Books and Titan Comics are a married couple named Nick Landau and Vivian Chung, and Viv comes from Singapore. And I thought, perhaps in honor of Viv, maybe my character would grow up in Singapore. And I thought it was more a sort of inside joke than anything else. I said, let's imagine a very sinister crime family living in Singapore. And of course, everyone from Singapore says, what are you talking about? You'd go over to Malaysia. You wouldn't do it. And so it was it was meant to be a joke, but it just, I think, made me look kind of dumb because this kind of thing doesn't go on in Singapore, or at least as far as I know, it doesn't.
Yes.
Well, as far as we know,
As far as we know, exactly. You know,
Yeah.
they go to Johor or so. But that happened to Viv.
all the bad thing happens at our side of the world.
That's it. It's always on. So I did it for that reason, and then that was why Singapore. And then I thought, what's the character's background? And I imagined a marriage between a man from Corsica in Europe and a woman who came from Malaysia, and they had, I think it was 5 children, 4 boys, then 1 girl, and the mother sadly died, and the father, who's a criminal, had to raise the kids. And the only life he knew to teach them was the life of crime, and he taught them how to be gun runners and mercenaries and loan sharks and so on. But he taught his daughter a little bit differently, a few different skills, and so she became much better at infiltration than at actually carrying out violence. I just thought that was interesting.
All right. One story right there. We were like, well, initially I just thought that maybe like, oh, there was like a trick that inspired you or something. But now knowing that it came from an inside joke, it totally changes things up.
A warm and affectionate one. I wanted to do a book that Viv could read and enjoy and see a touch of home from, and Uni, to the extent that she traveled around Asia, same thing. I want, and I also thought, too many American comics are set in America. It's boring. It's been done. Let's look at the rest of the world.
So do something at the Far East, right?
Yes, or do something else. At least don't only go in the U.S. So, for instance, Ang, for the second book, which we haven't published yet, but it's coming out starting in August. We are in the U.S. for part of it, but we're all over the world. We're in Monaco, and we open in Langkawi. Where Joanna is recuperating from her troubles, and
do you actually allow Ang to actually go to Langkawi for a site?
I hope you got to go
to do some research so that you can actually draw better.
I went
inspiration.
So that was from memory mostly, and of course some Google image.
Okay.
Just out of curiosity, is my geography anything to do with the choice of artists when you among the many artists that you pick?
The good news was it didn't have any deciding impact, because I had already decided that your art was gorgeous and that I loved it and it was perfect. And I decided that before even thinking for 1 second about the geography. Then I thought about the geography and I thought, oh, that's even better. But if you had been living in Paris, France, or in Moscow, I would have said yes just the same. But it was even better because of the geography.
Out of how many contestants may I ask?
Sure, I
have never asked this.
No,
Is that the first time that you find this out?
We almost exclusively work by email, back and forth. So I send things in the middle of the night, my time, and then I wake up in the morning, and then there's a message back. So we do a lot of email. We haven't had that many face-to-face conversations. But
okay. So most of the interaction, the creation of the first book is actually through just emails?
Email, sending files back and forth, pictures back and forth. In my scripts, I sometimes include photographs inside the script to give an idea of what was in my head. And then, Ang will come back and say things like, you have a fight scene. I have this interesting martial arts move I'd love to draw. What do you think about having her kick in this way? And I say, that's great. Go for it. So it's very collaborative, but we haven't had that many live phone conversations. A few, but not a. So the answer to your question is, I think it was more than 100. It was fewer than 1,000. I don't remember exactly how many, but there were quite a lot. Okay. And there were several that were very talented, very good, but not the right style for this book. So, for instance, they might have been more cartoonish, a little bit more like the Batman TV cartoon. And that's a great style, but I wanted the Gun Honey look to be more realistic. I didn't want it to be the cartoonish look. And then there were some people who did really good science fiction spaceships, and that's not relevant here. So, we may hire some of them too for a different book. But for Gun Honey, when I saw Ang, your work that looked like young Frazetta with the the musculature and the anatomy perfectly delineated, and the cross hatching and the stippling, and it was just so gorgeous. I just fell in love.
I think that's a part when we actually start noticing the preview pages of Gun Honey, right? I actually show it to some of the other artist friends. Some of them, majority of them actually says that, hey, this looks a little bit like the Hong Kong manhwa, which is actually with a lot of cross hatching, a lot of textures, and I guess, and then back then, right, we were actually suspecting that maybe Ang used to actually work for Hong Kong manhwa, maybe as an assistant or whatnot. So maybe you can actually just let us know, how do you actually figure out, because from the east, from the west, I guess that you will be actually get related to people like Frank Frazetta or maybe a John Buscema, because of your dynamic and the understanding of anatomy. From the east, because we also read the East manhwa, and just trying to actually understand, how do you actually attain this style that you have that gets you this particular job?
Yeah.
I think mostly Frazetta was the backbone of it. I love Frazetta, and I learned anatomy and composition from basically copying Frazetta for a while. And regarding the manhwa lines and everything, I have maybe one or two manhwa comics that I got from somewhere, probably cousins, probably probably relatives. That my dad also left me a stash of very old 70s comics, so I kind of tried to flip through it and see why is it that their style is slightly different. In fact, manhwa has a lot more panels in a page with the same size, not really the same size, slightly bigger size, compared to the regular US comics, right? So they have more than 10 per page. And I was like, how? I do not know how I can draw 10 panels in a single page. So I did not draw as small a panel as they do. So I just take what is necessary and adopt it into my style. That was how this. Some people would probably call it a marriage of East and West style, but it's just what I feel was good for my art.
Right, which is actually the best way of actually telling the Gun Honey. Is that right? You chosen this particular style.
It happened to be the best way, I suppose.
I apologize, by the way, if you hear police sirens or ambulance sirens in the background. I don't know if you can hear it. If you do, that's the curse of living in New York City. You constantly have ambulances and police cars going back. So I apologize in advance.
No worries.
All right.
As long as the police or the fire truck is actually not coming to your place.
Well, we'll find out.
I just presume that you actually just save your books first before anything else.
Yes, before the fire, the books. Well, my daughter first, then the books. I think that's
okay.
Okay, you got your
why not both?
Yes, you have to get both. One of the things that I've been torn as a writer. If a page has more panels on it, I can often advance the story further. Mm-hmm. But if a page has fewer panels on it, I get more gorgeous art. Mm-hmm. And I'm always torn. I would rather, if I could do a comic that was 22 pages, each page having one panel on it, or maybe two, I think it would be gorgeous. I couldn't tell much story because you don't get enough story, enough dialogue, and so on. But your art is, you do equally good work on very different kinds of pages. So I was commenting recently, we did a pair of pages that were just two people talking. One person is being interrogated by the other, and they're just stuck in a dark room. And it's very hard to make that visually interesting. And Ang does an amazing job of making it visually interesting with interesting angles and lighting and so on. But some of the very best pages are where you have the whole page to work with. And you can show Joanna in her full body, and you can show action and so on. So I'm always trying to find excuses to to give you room to work. Lots of room.
Yeah, I think that while we are actually on this particular topic, right, we need to actually go back in time a little bit. We talk about Ang's art style, but we did not talk about how he actually came to be a comic book artist, right?
Right.
Because just like
I'm
I've
actually curious about that.
when we actually found out about Gan Hani, there's no information regarding on Ang except for on the art station, right?
Okay.
So maybe you can actually let us know what's your past life before becoming a comic book artist for Gan Hani.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, all right. So my first job was basically working in a lab, in a hospital lab. So
a hospital lab. Wow.
Yeah. We do blood tests and stuff like that. Then I find the job to be very well,
less
you can
exciting.
Say same-ish, and the night shift that we had to do was kind of getting on me too. So I was like losing sleep and stuff like that. Sleep is very important to me now. Then I was trying out comics part-time. It didn't work out that well because, as you know, in order to do interiors of comics, not just the covers or commission, you kind of have to put in the hours, right? So I can't with a part-time job and a full-time with a full-time job and a part-time attempt. So I save up some money. I think I remember saving up about eight to 9 months worth of salary, thinking I could go through this attempt. So once I saved up enough money, I resigned and I tried comics. And I think about a year or two into this full-time job, I came across Mr. Charles' Art Station. Was it Art Station?
It was Art Station, yeah. I think I just posted we're about to do a new comic. And you just saw it on Art Station?
So I saw it on Art Station. I thought, all right, nothing to do, just give it a try. And I think it was within a very short time, probably the next day or the next 2 days, Mr. Charles replied me, and I was super excited. And I was like, yeah, let's try it. And he gave me the script. Before that I was supposed to draw 3 to 4 pages of the comic. I think Mr. Charles picked page number 1. There was one page somewhere about page number 8 or 9. There was that the page whereby there was a flashback to Joanna's father training her. And there was one more page which I don't quite remember. But anyway, I tried for those pages. And a few days later, Mr. Charles came back to me and said, "Hey, like your work." And I was
picked. History.
Yep.
And the rest was history.
History. Now everyone in the world knows your name.
Well,
so the question is, how successful is Gan Hani? I mean, aside from it being warrant for a sequel, or at least the second art of the series, is that something that you're actually very proud of, Charles?
I'm extremely proud of it. We've published probably 24 comics in the Hard Case Crime Comics line. And this has been the most successful, which is not to say that the others were not successful. They've been very good and critically successful, meaning even if they didn't sell a very large number of copies, they were well reviewed and people loved them. This also got very good reviews, which is very gratifying, feels good, but it sold quite well. And the best example I can give you is that Diamond Comics, which is this distributor in the US, they may distribute outside the US as well, but at least in the US.
They are distributing out of the US as well.
They are, okay. And they have something they call non-premiere. They have bestseller lists, and I think they publish previews, and that's an advertisement for the second Gan Hani that's coming out in August. And they divide the world into premier and non-premier. It's a slightly insulting name, non-premier.
Yeah, non-premier sounds insulting.
It's a little dismissive, but still, what they mean, I think, is premier means Marvel and DC.
Marvel and DC, or maybe even
right. So our sales don't compare to Spider-Man and Doctor Strange, and it's not at that level. But for the non-premier comics, we ended up being Gun Honey, and the first Gun Honey ended up being the top-selling non-premier comic of the year, which I never expected. That was extraordinary. I don't know exactly how many copies that means, but it's far beyond what we would normally sell for a crime comic. Keep in mind that crime comics, as you know, and your viewers know, crime comics are not the most popular genre. Superheroes are the most popular. And then you have video game tie-ins like Assassin's Creed,
Fantasy,
you have Doctor Who, Blade Runner, Sherlock. And Gun Honey wasn't based on a TV show. Gun Honey was not superheroes. It wasn't zombies. It wasn't horror. So I expected, my expectations were lower, but people really responded to it. And that's why as soon as they saw the success, the people at Titan said, I hope you're willing to do a second one. And I got it immediately sent an email to Ang and said, are you willing to do a second one? Because I'm willing. I can make up more stories. How do you feel about the intense work of drawing another 4 issues? Because it's a lot of work. You know, writing is hard too, but I can write 22 pages a lot faster than anyone. The fastest artist in the world could draw 22 pages. It's just an enormous amount of labor. And so I wanted to make sure that you were up for it, and you were, thankfully. And in fact, as of yesterday, or was it 2 days ago, you finished the last pencil page.
Yeah, 2 days ago.
And I can actually have a glimpse behind him that he did some ink pages as well. If I actually zoom in.
Zoom in.
Yeah, it looks like he has some ink pages just behind him.
Are we allowed to have a look at it?
Can we? Is there any spoiler there that you can show? Maybe you need Charles to actually approve it first.
Oh, no, you can. As far as I'm concerned, you're welcome to show it. I'm just thinking if it's the first page of issue 2, it has some nudity in it, so you probably can't show it for that reason.
Yeah, before actually YouTube takes us down, or Malaysia government come and look for it.
Right, I don't want you to get in trouble for it. You can cover it.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow. So for those that's tuning in, this is an exclusive preview that you can have a look.
Right.
And those are just
it's amazing.
This is the first panel, the first page of Gun Honey Blood for Blood issue 2. Issue 1 hasn't even come out yet, and issue 2 is only half inked. It is gorgeous. It's, you know, when you put your heroine in a skin tight black catsuit like Catwoman might wear, or an infiltrating burglar or something like that. There are so many different ways to draw it, but the use of white space to indicate the reflections of this. I want to call it fabric. It's probably not fabric. It's what, PVC or some other kind of substance. But you get the sense beautifully of how it reflects the light because of the white space you leave. Which I think
you probably can put it down. Thank you for taking so long.
All right, Hank, before we go on, I think we've got a couple of questions.
Yeah, we can actually run through some of the questions that's actually coming from the audience. So
all right,
it's actually quite relevant. Let's start with Pi. Pi actually just commented regarding on Gun Honey. I mean, he's comparing it to the Quentin Tarantino style of, I guess, the Pulp Fiction ways, or the crime-related storytelling, which is actually felt effortless as well as breathless cinematic. So this actually spun me one other question, right? So when you're actually writing this, do you already have like a movie in mind or a TV in mind? Because it's also, I think that's something that we probably ask about in the later stage of the interview, or maybe just even now, that how did this get picked up as an option for a TV series?
So I think in the US, you see a lot of filmmakers and TV producers who look to comic books as a source of material. And I think one of the reasons they do that is that comic books are obviously a very visual medium, and the panels of comic books remind them of storyboards, which is one of the visualization tools they use when preparing a movie. And so for a Hollywood producer, it's very natural. It feels very comfortable to open a comic book, see these panels, and in their head, understand how that would translate into a scene in a movie. And so a lot of people who would like to see their stories turned into movies make them as comics first instead of just words on a page. A lot of Hollywood producers don't like to read, just words on a page, but they like images. So
I think that's people in general.
I think you're right,
especially the current generations.
Notwithstanding all my books on I like comics too. So who doesn't like a beautiful picture? And so from the start, although I didn't specifically set out to turn Gun Honey into a TV show or a movie, from the start, as soon as I saw Joanna and what she was doing and the kinds of adventures she got into, I realized this could work well in film. There's plenty of action. There's intrigue and snappy dialogue and sex appeal and all those good things. And so it did occur to me that this could work as a film. And I took it to some people I knew in the film business. I won't mention the people who said no. There were several of those. Several of them said, I love it. I really enjoy the story, but this is the wrong time to try to get a production off the ground that features a main character who's this sexy. In the world of Me Too, we don't do sexy women as villains. And I said, well, that doesn't make sense. She's extremely strong, competent, ferocious. She's in charge. There's no question throughout this book that anyone's taking advantage of her. She's the one in the driver's seat, literally. But I understand some people were a little nervous about that. In any event, so I have one prior experience with television myself. We published a book called The Colorado Kid by Stephen King, which is a whole other story that Stephen King chose to write a book for us that was extremely kind of him, extremely generous. And it was our first bestseller, the first novel we ever published that became a bestseller. And it became a TV show called Haven, which ran for 6 years on, in the US, it ran on the Sci-Fi Channel called just SYFY. I don't know where it ran in other parts of the world, but it was available throughout the world. And you can see it now. We did 6 seasons of it. And I got to work on that, which was terrific. I didn't have any background in film or TV, but they kindly let me work on it. And I consulted on all the scripts and I wrote a few of the scripts myself. And I enjoyed it very much. And working with that production company was really a pleasure. It's called Pillar Segan, and Lloyd Segan is the Segan of the name. And I went to Lloyd and I said, I've got this new comic book. Would you take a look at it? We had so much fun working together for 6 years on Haven. Let's do it again. Why don't we make another TV show? And he said, let me see it. And then he called me back and he said, you didn't mention that the main character came from Malaysia and that the artist is from Malaysia. We are now in a partnership with a production company based in Malaysia.
Wow.
Do you mind if I show it to our partner in Malaysia, who's this woman named Min Lim, who is wonderful. And she has a partner named Chirang Chung. And they together did the Asian version of The Bridge, which was a terrific thriller TV series that I went and watched and had a lot of fun with. It was a great show. And then we got all of us together on the phone and said, you know what, this could be an opportunity to tell a story about an Asian main character, film it either entirely or partly in Asia, and do something that people haven't already seen before. And so they were very excited about it, and we shook hands on it. And there's now the pilot script exists. It's been through 3 drafts. It's very exciting. I think it's being shown to various directors now and maybe lead actresses for candidates to play Joanna. And I don't know if it will get made because far more scripts get written than shows get made. But I hope so. I think that would be really nice if it happened.
I'm just sharing the screen of I guess what has been mentioned. So is this basically the summary of what Charles has actually mentioned regarding on the
I think that's right. I think my eyes are bad enough that I can't read it from here, but I think it says roughly the same things. I can tell you that
Min Lim. You actually mentioned like The Bridge, Min Lim.
Oh, The Bridge, yes.
Yeah.
And one of the things, it's interesting, in a comic book, you can have internal monologues. You can get inside the character's head. You can read what the character's thinking. But for a TV show, you don't really want to do that with voiceover. You don't want the main character talking to you in monologue. Yeah. And so one of the things that the producers said was, and they were right, for the TV show, you have to give Joanna a bigger group of people that she works with, because that gives us people with whom she can talk.
Oh, okay. It's like a Mission Impossible team that they can actually
exactly, or Ocean's 11 or something like that.
Yeah, Ocean's 11. Yeah.
You don't necessarily need 11 people, but you need more than one. So in the comics, she works with this one government agent named Brooke Barrow, and he would be on the TV show too. But they said things like, well, where does Joanna get her guns? Does she make them herself, or does somebody else make them? What happens if Joanna gets injured? Who does she go to for medical help? And so there are all these characters that are going to turn up in the TV show that you haven't met in the comic.
So does that actually mean that while actually developing the TV shows, you're actually already behind the scene, like laying ground to actually expand the Gun Honey universe in the comics as well? Because you're adapting, right? You just created some characters.
Well, I think if the TV show gets made and there are viewers out there, let's imagine there are 1 million people watching this show, it's going to be very tempting to introduce the characters from the show into the comic book because all those viewers want to see them. And we'll probably do that at that point. But for the second Gun Honey, Blood for Blood, which is coming out in August, you won't see any of those new characters because the TV show hasn't been made yet. So I don't know what the characters look like yet. I don't know who's going to stay. You know, just because we have a script doesn't mean the script won't change. So for the second one, it's our old friends, a new villain. There are any number of new characters that you'll get to see, some of whom won't live to see the end of the comic, and some of whom will. And but not the new characters from the TV show. They won't be in there yet. But if the TV show does get made, then yes, I think it'll be a lot of fun to write about those characters too.
Fantastic. So these are really awesome stuff that we're actually getting our first-hand information.
Right. I mean, nobody knows any of this. I can't go into more detail because it would.
Of course, then you actually breach your NDA. Then you jeopardize.
There are all sorts of reasons not to
relationship and whatnot.
but wouldn't it be exciting to see a thing like this on the air? I think it would be great.
I think it'll be totally awesome. I mean, we do have a lot now of TV shows about all this, about women empowerment. Doesn't mean that, it's about crime scene, and I do understand, about the whole Me Too movement. And, it's just nice. Basically, everybody loves a badass girl kicking ass on TV.
Would it be as mature in terms of content for the TV, or you're actually targeting more of the PG-13 kind of audience? Because I do know that the comics is actually more mature, right?
If you did, look, Game of Thrones had plenty of R-rated content, so you can do R-rated for TV. But I think this would be more likely to be PG or PG-13. That's my guess. One question is how dark it goes. So the story here, when you get to the end, it's relatively dark. I mean, there's a lot of tragedy in Joanna's life, and even though it's a fun, exciting comic, I think there's a lot of darkness too. And one of the big questions is how dark would the TV show go? Would it be sinister and noirish like a film noir, or would it be a little bit more just fun like Ocean's 11? And I don't know which way it would go. We haven't figured that out yet.
I think that's also basically one of the challenges when you're doing adaptations from a comic or from a novel into TV. I think it's always the translation of how is it brought over to the big screen. That's one I think. I'm just curious though, how much involvement would it be from you and from Ang over if this thing kicks off, the whole TV show?
Well, I've already told them that if they actually get it off the ground, they need to do something with Ang for visualization and figuring out what the thing looks like. So they haven't gotten to that point yet, but I've certainly told them they should, especially since Ang, you're right there. You're really close by. I'll fly there gladly, but I won't be able to be there a lot. But you could actually be there, and so I've encouraged them to talk to you when trying to figure out what things look like and what characters look like. But the truth is, it all depends on who actually funds the production. I think if it's done entirely in Asia and funded from within Asia, we'll have more opportunity. If HBO comes along and says we're doing it, or Netflix says we're doing it, I suspect they'll be calling the shots from home in Hollywood, and we probably won't get as much opportunity. But we'll see.
Well, you can always try our Dato' Michelle Yeoh. She just had a very successful
Everything
movie.
Everywhere All at Once, which I'm
yes, that's a wonderful movie. So and in fact, actually, Dato' Michelle Yeoh is actually just also from the hometown as Ang.
Yeah,
I didn't know that. Is she from Ipoh?
Yes.
I didn't know that. Well, I love Michelle Yeoh, going back to when I went on my Jackie Chan phase back before everyone in America had discovered Jackie Chan, because he came here and did not as good movies here as he did in Hong Kong. I was on jury duty. Every 8 years, you're required to sit on a jury in New York, and the courthouse is right next to Chinatown. And I was wandering around Chinatown and found a very small video shop that had handmade copies of Hong Kong movies. and I bought up a huge sack of these things, and I didn't even know what they were because they weren't labeled. And I would put them in. This was many years ago. I put them in my VCR and played them, and I found all these Jackie Chan movies. You know, the original Police Story and Armor of God. And all
those are good stuff.
Drunken Master. I think this may have been before Drunken Master 2. This was the original Drunken Master, and I fell in love with these. And then Michelle Yeoh, of course, turns up in I think her first might have been one of the
Story 3, I guess.
Yes.
3 or 4, I forget which one. And I fell in love with Michelle Yeoh, of course. So I would what dream if she could be part of this. You know, a young Michelle Yeoh would be an amazing Joanna Tan. I wish we could. Maybe she could be Joanna's mom. That would be possible.
Oh, I'm just curious though about those VHS tapes. Like, I know Hong Kong films. Like, were there even like subtitles on it and stuff like that, or was it just
there were subtitles in Chinese, which
so it's like purely watching just
so
visuals.
you learned some Chinese along the way?
I learned a little bit of Chinese, very little. But the so you're right. I couldn't follow necessarily the story, except to the extent that you figure it out as you go, just from watching the visuals. But the choreography was like it's stunning. It was like when I watched Fred Astaire movies as a little kid, and you saw this virtuoso physical genius dancing. And watching Jackie Chan work was similar to watching Gene Kelly or Fred Astaire. I just loved it. So that's where my notions of action came from that, and from watching Raiders of the Lost Ark as an 11-year-old boy and learning, you know, what Steven Spielberg could do with falling in front of or crawling under or climbing on top of a truck. So Ang, I don't think I said this in the script, but there's the scene toward the end of the new story where one of our characters is climbing on top of a truck. And
it's actually from Indiana Jones.
Well, I remember the truck chase scene from Raiders of the Lost Ark, and there's that evil German guy climbing hand over the truck. And I tried to find a frame of it to show you, and I couldn't find it. I think it was just in my imagination. He does climb on the truck, but I don't think you ever see him top down crawling along the top of the truck. So anyway, I couldn't find the image, but you drew it exactly the way I had it in mind. So that's
perfect chemistry there.
Yep.
So we can actually probably move on to the next question from the audience. This is actually from Julius Lee. Julius is also part of the members of the community, and he's actually an aspiring comic book artist. He sometimes actually show us some of his practice interior arts as well. And I guess that his question for Ang is that how long did you practice on interiors until you actually felt that you were ready to go pro? Or what was the moment to actually tell you that just quit the lab assistant job and just pick up pen or pencil to actually start drawing? And you will have confidence that you get money from that?
No confidence at all at that time.
Just take the leap of faith.
Yeah, it was sort of a leap of faith. And if you are asking specifically about practicing on the interiors or the layout, even after I've fully committed on a full-time artist job, I never really got the chance to do much. There are a number of clients here and there with their pictures, and they were like, Kickstarter material. And some would ask me to do like maybe 6 pages or 10 pages so that they can pitch it to, say, Image Comics or some other publishers. So that was all the practice that I get until Ganhani, which is the best practice of all because it's literally on the job and I'm forced to learn. There are so many things that I would consider. I think I made a lot of mistakes, especially regarding word bubbles. I probably gave Mr. David, our letterer, a great deal of headache. I'm really sorry. I did not know how to space my panels. I did not know how much of an impact it could be. So I think issue 1 was basically the practice on interiors because I get to make a lot of mistakes and I get to learn.
So you're doing the on-the-job training.
Yeah. So it was only after issue 2 that Mr. Charles probably had no choice at that time and talked to me nicely and said, "Hey, Ang, you need to leave space for the lecturer." And
Okay.
he probably sugarcoated nicely. So that was when I got thinking, oh, how do I do that? Because I was thinking the lecturer's job would probably be not so difficult, right? Just find a space and then I look online, see what other people how they approach their layouts and everything. I did not know how much of a space I needed to live. I didn't know how big, but now I know, of course. Now, in fact, I kind of have a guide here. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Oh, wow.
You bought a guide.
Yep. Okay, this small fella here and this one will give me about 3 to 4 words.
Okay.
So whereas this one is probably close to 6 or 8.
Okay.
And this one is about 11 or 12. So using this, the second volume is much more evenly spaced for dialogues and word bubbles.
And I've learned to not write so many words. Which
don't worry about that, sir. I can break up the words. Well, at least I can plan and have a guide. If you have too many words, we can do just like before. We have an extra panel somewhere.
That's true.
Sometimes the extra panel is just for words. I see this trick done in manga a lot of times, and it looks very effective. So yeah, those were the things that I learned as I did Gun Honey, the second issue. On the third issue afterwards, I was having in my mind that, hey, I have to leave space. So by that time, it was pretty okay.
I think Hancock is beautiful in a sense where we just witness, how they discuss. So all of us are getting like live feedback. It's like, okay, one's about, how do you do spacing? And another one's like, how do you do writing? So I just felt it's beautiful that we're witnessing live of
So we are actually,
this amazing chemistry. And, we can work it out.
Yeah, it's probably the wrong analogy. We usually say that that's how we see sausage get made, because once you actually see sausage get made, we are not interested in sausage. Yeah, but what we are actually witnessing here means that we are actually even more interested. I mean, you actually add more depth to the creation itself, right? Like Ang coming from almost like a no comic book backgrounds coming in with Charles that has so much experience in terms of writing, and both of them just working together and come up with something that is actually still beautiful. One of the best-selling non-premium books, the top #1 best-selling non-premium series in 2021. Which is
and back to Ang as well.
So we are actually witnessing a lot of history just by this session alone, just by the first hour of it. We are actually witnessing a lot and discovering a lot more, which is actually very interesting. So another question for Ang, I guess, before we actually move on to other questions, especially for Charles or both. Can Ang share some sketches or prelims of Gun Honey? Love to see how it was conceptualized. So I guess that in the trade paperback, it does have one or few which is actually on the smaller thumbnails. So maybe Ang, do you have something that's actually just nearby behind you, in front of your table, that you can actually show us, like when you design Gun Honey, right? Oh, he just walked off, but I guess that he's looking for those. So when you actually design Joanna Tan as Gun Honey, does she actually went through several iterations in terms of her design?
Not really.
Not really.
I think
during the first one.
Yeah, no, the very first picture I ever saw of her looked fine to me. I was very happy with it.
Wow.
Yeah, so you can consider the test pages that Mr. Charles asked me to do as the prelims of the design or the look. Since Mr. Charles said I have no problem with her, so basically that was it.
Oh, okay.
And I didn't I'm not sure because the thing is Joanna is supposed to be half Asian and half Corsican. And I was trying to give her a slightly higher nose than most Asian, and that was the basis of her look.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, personally, where were you? Like, did you have any specific inspirations or like,
Is that
models that you were
reference?
looking?
Because
Yeah,
she
like a
looks
reference
so.
that you went
It's
for.
almost like someone that we might bump into, right?
I'm
Is there
not
like
sure.
specific person, an actress, or someone that you know that looks like Joanna Tan?
Not really. I guess they were the accumulation of every Asian actresses that I probably saw
It
in
was
my
all visual
life.
library in here.
Yeah, so I just picked those parts
Pick
that
all those appealing and just smash it and create her.
project it together and
And voila.
that's Joanna. Yeah. Mm.
And for
I
context,
love-
Charles, he used a word called rojak. Rojak is actually a food in Malaysia that we actually just mix fruits and some what do you call it? The biscuits or something. We actually and sometimes noodles
Oh,
that we
this
actually
sounds
eat it together.
delicious.
Yes.
I haven't had breakfast yet. This sounds great. You're making me hungry.
Yeah, you can just go down to New York and look for a Malaysia restaurant. And
I
maybe
absolutely
they'll do
will.
that.
I'll tell you something. Ang knocked the ball out of the park with Joanna. As soon as I saw her, I said, yes, that looks like Joanna. The thing that continually impresses me, one of the things that continually impresses me is that there are all sorts of background characters in a story like Gun Honey. There are bodyguards, there are villains, and not the main villain, the secondary villain's third bodyguard, or some informant that you have to see for just one page. And each of these people, whenever I describe them in the script, I just say, it's a tall man or has a beard. That's it. And on what you do, when I get the page back, the face of each of these minor characters who you will only see for a page is so human and so recognizably distinct. It's not a cliche. It looks like somebody I might see on the subway in New York City, somebody I might see walking down the street. It has character and difference, and there's something about it that looks like a real person. So I'm thinking of Saeed, who's the no spoilers, but there's somebody who supplies weaponry, and Saeed looks like somebody I don't know him. He doesn't look like a particular person I know, but he looks like somebody I might know, somebody I might run into at the office. And I love how you do that, and I don't know how you do that. I thought, well, how do you do that?
Saeed is based on a mama.
Okay.
So a mama that you frequent to, a mama is actually a Muslim Indian that usually operates on night eateries in Malaysia.
Okay. I hope you won't mind.
No, I don't. Saeed sounds like a mama, a very similar name actually of someone that I frequent. I think it was Salam restaurant. So I was like, hey, Saeed, and this guy kind of looks like a Saeed. So I just try to draw him. He's not exactly he doesn't exactly look like the real guy in real life, but he
he might not like how he dies in the book.
Yeah, that thing, everything is based on him. So
it'd be honored to be actually drawn into
how do you come up with the
immortalized?
There's that guy with the little goatee, the second in command. Is he somebody famous too? Somebody that you know?
The goatee of the second in command wasn't really based on a real person, but because at that time I was like I was watching a lot of probably Avengers, I think.
Okay. You saw Tony Stark.
Tony Stark, yeah.
That's great. That's great. Well, wherever you pull these people from, they live on the page, and that's great. It just makes me so happy.
Goodness, you're just making us wanting to actually just read this.
I am heavily intrigued, yeah. And now knowing that is, the inspirations come from just totally different spectrums where you have from a mama or basically from an eatery place, and now that Charles saying that they're so real with all the personalities,
Well,
and I
it's an
guess
idea.
that
When the books actually comes out, maybe Ang can actually just take a photo with the mama.
I'm not sure. He might really not like how he does.
But you don't show him
Don't show him that page.
Just show him.
Well, one of these days, what we have to do, Ang, is put you and me in a scene. Just in the background, we have you and me standing on the side as Joanna is running by.
cameo, special appearance.
Yeah, we request for some cameo as well.
Or we could get
die.
That'll be okay.
We can
But
die.
I guess that's one of the things. But when you're talking about characterization, I mean, how Charles, when you describe Ang's characters and how it really gives life, and that's also another one of the challenges that you see in comics. Sometimes it's just beautiful visuals, but then you see all these pretty faces, but there's no character to it. And I think that's a challenge for a lot of young artists who are attempting to go into comics. There's a lot of beautiful sequential work, there's a lot of beautiful characters, but you don't feel it because there's no relatability to the audience itself. I mean, I guess I'm coming from because I'm personally an educator, and so what would your advice be, for Charles as a writer? What is it that really would you give an advice over to young writers out there? Because a lot of times they write a lot of story, but you don't feel it. So what is the advice we give to young writers? And also for how would you be able to give your advice over to artists? What is it that makes a character have personality, have a story? What intrigues them? So yeah.
Would you like to go first?
No, after you, sir.
Oh, gentlemen. It's hard. It's hard. I started as a young writer. I'm not ancient, I'm not 90 years old, but I'm not young anymore. But when I started, I wrote a lot of paper thin characters, and I focused more on the plot. I wanted to know who killed who and why, and who's chasing who. And it wasn't important to me to have the characters really breathe and live and engage your emotions. But then I realized, well, first of all, people didn't like the stories as much as I wanted them to like it. And then I thought about the stories I liked. And so I would pull books off my shelf, and I would try to see what the authors did that made the difference between a story I fell in love with, where I cared about the character and I really wanted to know what happened to this character, and a story where the character was unimportant. It was really just beat after beat of plot. And so there are many writers who are really gifted about this. One of the best is Stephen King. Now, I'm not an enormous horror fan. It's not like I read a ton of books about werewolves and vampires and so on. But what makes Stephen King so wonderful is that usually within one page of starting one of his books, your heart is gripped by something about the character, and you care a lot about the character and what's going to happen to this character. And the horror hasn't started yet. You haven't gotten to the monsters yet. And actually, Stephen King's son, Joe Hill, who's also a novelist, does exactly the same thing. And sometimes within one page, you feel, I need to know what happens to this guy because this woman, because I care about this. And then so what you do is you, as a writer, you read that page closely or that first chapter, and you say, why do I care? Which of these sentences, there's nothing on this page but ink, words. So which of these words suddenly made me care? And you realize it's learning something about the person's childhood, or what makes the person afraid, or why is the person sad, or why is the person anticipating something with enormous excitement. If you have something relatable in that character's emotional landscape, you as a reader are likely to be drawn in. And so I went through all these books that I loved, and I tried to imitate them. And of course I didn't do it as well, but the more you actually try, the better the closer you come to the target. And then the funny thing is, I'm a terrible singer. I cannot sing. I won't demonstrate. I'm a terrible singer.
Okay.
You can do karaoke.
Take my word for it. But when somebody plays a note on a piano,
right,
and I try to hit that note, I'll fail. I won't hit that note. But then as I move my voice up or down, when I get to the note, I hear it.
right.
And I can tell that I finally got it. And it's like that with writing. When you write a scene about a character and you aren't getting it right and the emotions aren't engaged, you don't feel this resonance. But when you hit it, when you write a sentence and it lands and you realize, oh my gosh, that one's a good one, people will react to that. You can kind of hear it. There's an inner ear and you can hear it. And the first time you do it, you think, oh my gosh, I just wrote a sentence as good as a professional writer. But you've got to write a lot of sentences before you get, unless you're very lucky or your talent is enormous, you have to write a lot of sentences before you get there. But the most important thing is to write a lot and to develop that inner ear that allows you to say, okay, I just did it. How do I do it again? I did it once. Now I've got to do it again. And once you can do that enough times to fill an entire page, now you're a writer. Now you're ready to be professional. But it's an enormous, it's like when you lift weights, you can't lift heavy weights. You have to start with light weights and do a lot. So anyway, those are my thoughts. But what is it like for an artist?
But before we actually move on to Ang, maybe we can actually just expand on that particular, what you actually just said, Charles.
Okay.
For Julius, he would also like to actually understand that because you were a writer for non-comics, like for prose as well as short stories, and how would be the transition from doing those and into comics?
It was very
hard is that?
Very hard. Writing comics is the hardest writing I've ever done, period. It's harder than writing novels and harder than writing TV. When you write TV, you say, the car zooms down the street, pulls to a stop, a woman jumps out of the car. In comics, nothing zooms anywhere. Nobody jumps anywhere. Every panel, I mean, I'm just telling you what you know, every panel is a frozen instant in time. So there's no such thing as a panel where somebody opens a box. The box is closed, or the box is open, or it's half open, but you won't see the lid go up. And as a TV writer, you get used to describing motion.
Everything, yeah.
You can't do that. And in prose, the thing with prose is your book can be as many pages as you want. And it can have as many events on a page as you want. And if you want a dialogue scene to go on for 18 pages where people are being funny, you know, Quentin Tarantino, he can write dialogue that goes on for 20 pages and it can be funny and amusing. You can't do that in comics. There are only so many, there are exactly 22 pages, not 23, not 21. It has to be exactly 22. Each page can have maybe 5, 6, 7 panels. Miraculously, you manage to get 9 once in a while, but that's very small. Each panel can only have so many words or there's no room for the picture. And so you have this extremely constrained challenge. You've got to tell your story in exactly these number of pages and panels and words, and no motion. It's all frozen images. And then on top of everything else, if you ever have a big surprise, you really want it to be when someone turns the page. If you have a surprise on the right-hand page, they see it as soon as they're looking at the left-hand page. They turn the page to read the left-hand page, but this dead person with, you know, a bullet in his head, they can't not see it. And so if you want it to be a surprise, it has to hit when somebody turns the page. So that all surprises have to be on a left-hand, meaning even numbered page. That's really hard. And so if you like, you know, and also you want this to be digestible. Basically, when you change locations, sorry about interesting sound.
Joanna just wrote by.
Yeah. So what was going by outside? I'm curious.
Is somebody aspiring to be a racing car driver?
We have those at night. So it's like we have people on dirt bikes who go with the loudest engines you can possibly find, and they go right outside my apartment, and it's very annoying. It wouldn't be annoying if I was doing it. That would be fun. But when they do it, it's annoying. These are challenges. It's a little bit, I've compared it to writing haiku or writing a limerick or a sonnet where you have to be exactly 14 lines. It's got to rhyme in certain ways. And if you don't do it right, you fail. So I find writing comics much, much harder. It's fun, but much harder than anything else.
So that being said, right, does that actually mean that people that actually write comics really have passion for comics?
I hope so.
Because if it's so hard, if it's actually so hard, you wouldn't want to actually continue to do that, right?
It's hard,
if you
and it
always
doesn't
go back
always,
to.
Yeah, you're absolutely. It's hard. It doesn't always pay that well, and there aren't that many publishers out there. So selling your work, you know, if you want to sell your work to Marvel or DC, there's a long line of people ahead of you who would love to do the same thing. So it is
also restrictions. You need to abide to their house styles.
Yes, there's that too. Exactly. So, you know, I've never written comics for anyone else. Gun Honey is the only comic I've written from scratch. As an editor, I've edited other people's comics for Hard Case Crime. I don't know. I was thinking, you know, would I ever want to write a comic for DC or Marvel? I don't know. I really do. I mean, my character growing up was Flash. I love Flash. So if DC came to me and said, "Hey, would you like to do a one-issue special Flash thing?" I'd probably do it. But the work of actually doing it every month and hitting it every month without missing a date, that's got to be hard. So I'm not dying to do that. Hard enough to do
unless you're into the whole pressure and the deadline for it, then maybe it's a yes. But I guess that with Gun Honey itself, you really get to pour in all your passion and really all your creativity in it, and that's why it's working out well.
Yeah, well, we're going to have to brainstorm about Gun Honey 3. Every time I write one of these things, I use up everything I've got. I don't leave anything in the tank. So now I have no ideas for Gun Honey 3. And okay.
I have an idea for a casino scene.
Casino, excellent. I love it. Perfect. We'll make
that.
Are we looking at spoilers?
We haven't done that. We haven't done casino.
We just heard it first, yeah?
Casino.
We heard it
first.
Right here in MYCC, guys.
There will be a casino scene.
There will be a casino. Well, the other thing is I realized the titling scheme I now have. So the first Gun Honey did not have a subtitle. It was just called Gun Honey. And the second one is Gun Honey Blood for Blood. And so I decided that the third one is going to be called Gun Honey Collision Course. And I'm going to work my way through the alphabet. B,
so
C,
CC,
and so I don't know what B will be. What therapies, Gun Honey Dungeons and Dragons. I don't know. I'll make something up. But, so the next one is Collision Course. That nobody's heard that yet, including you, Ang. That's the subtitle for Gun Honey 3.
Wow, we heard it
Wow.
here, guys.
Right here, first in MYCC. It's super exciting.
So wait, no, you didn't get to say what you think. Maybe you're relieved that you didn't have to, but how did you start as an artist and know you're doing it? Right?
I think that's we can actually just get Ang to actually share a little bit on how he started. What's his advice for aspiring artists?
I was an aspiring artist as well, so it wasn't so long ago. So but what I learned was from Mr. Charles was that Mr. Charles touched something about developing your inner ear, right? So when it comes to that question, I was trying to develop my inner eye as well. So that's how the characters came to life. So what I do a lot, not just as an artist, but just in general, was that I people watch. I'll sit around a cafe somewhere, order food, order drink, whatever that comes to mind at the moment, and just quietly look around. Because anyone can be an inspiration for the next character. So Said was one of it. That old guy, that old guy that knows Joanna, and the young boy that answered the door. They were from watching people as well. So that old guy happens to be a frequent or regular in one of the coffee shops that I like.
I love it.
He does not have that long of a beard, of course, but that roughly that look, that Chinese guy, he's rich, but he's dressed up poor, and he purposely
Malaysian rich man,
white hair and everything, and his demeanor, he is someone who has a history. So whenever I watch people like this, I try to figure out from whatever clues that I can.
So do you scribble on the spot, or just you do a mental photograph and just go back?
Photos.
It's more a mental photograph thing.
And then you go back and start scribbling it.
Sometimes
to recall it back.
Sometimes I scribble it down. But sometimes the necessity came on its own. Like actually, when I reached that page, it was like a couple of pages before that I saw that old man, and he was fresh in my mind. So I was like, oh, okay, this looks like somebody Joanna would probably, know in the street or be familiar with. So yeah, why not get him inside? Then
so when you actually do casting for TV, maybe
yeah,
those are the guys
in a
that
way
you can.
it's a sort of casting, I suppose. But of course, this one doesn't involve actual interviews and asking them to come in for a portrait or anything. It's just like I pick up these people here and there, and then they inspire me. I mean, at least some of their features are memorable to me, so I put it inside the comic as the characters or part of the characters. So I guess
so essentially it's just going out and building sort of a visual diary. I think that's a problem with a lot of young artists these days. Everything they just get it off from the internet, or just conveniently going on Pinterest or something like that.
That's
And
actually true.
yeah, with pandemic as
Observing
well,
the
it's hard to go out. Yeah,
places that you're in is not things that our generation do. I mean, the current generation, because most of them will be just staring at the screen, don't pay attention to things that is actually surrounding you, right?
correct.
Yeah, I used to do that too. Like I like to game a lot on the mobile. But then because
work comes, you need to feed yourself.
Not exactly that, but I started trying to not do so much gaming, and it was difficult to weed myself.
Yeah, it's almost like an addiction, right?
Yep. So what do you do when you don't game when you're in a coffee shop, right? So
just pay attention to people.
Pay attention to your surroundings, and I start looking at people, trying to memorize their features if I can, and after a while, slowly it built up, and I'm glad that it can help in actually putting some characters to life in Gun Honey.
And it's not just visual, I guess, because that gives more depth to the story and the character itself. It's how it's being done and how it's being portrayed over in canvas. And I truly appreciate that, because I mean, for my students, all their references, I say, like, where are your references from? Oh, it's from Google, or from something they picked off. And it's like, it's really rare. I hear artists that actually go out, and then, with post-pandemic, where everyone's just, traumatic and all just staying, inside, going out there and really looking what's in the world out there it's probably a really solid advice for all the artists out there, and probably that's watching right now, and also for Charles as well.
Exactly. Probably can actually do a class to get your student just observe downstairs.
They hate going out.
Below your class.
Every time it's a field trip, like, oh, do I have to go out? I'm like, okay, fine. And like what Charles said just now about, practice is like, it goes, the instinct comes in when it hits right. So like for art, for comic writers that's following with our show right now, I guess I hope that you can pick up from what Charles and Ang said about, how do you find your own inspiration and what resonates with you. And yeah, thank you so much. That's a really, really solid advice from there.
Oh, now that you mentioned it, it was due to the pandemic partly too.
Okay.
Yeah, Miss, I'm not sure I got your name.
Billy.
Billy.
Yeah, Billy. Like Billy the Kid.
Billy the Kid. Excellent.
Okay, I thought it was a guy. Never mind. So it was partly due to the pandemic as well. Because you get stuck sitting at home for so long. You haven't seen people, right? So when there were partial that we are able to go out at least under control environment several times in the past 2 years, I can't wait to go out. Although I didn't specifically plan with any friends or to meet them up. So basically it was mostly solo. So that's where I think like, all right, so since I can't ask any friends out, or some of them would refuse anyway, so I might as well just do it alone and see how people move around, their mannerism, their clothing, stuff like that. So I have the pandemic to thank partially for this.
So it's a newfound appreciation for the outside world.
Yeah, in a way, like you just went out of prison or something, and you just like want to try all the foods and stuff that you haven't done for so many years, right? So yeah,
some of the things I actually kind of forgot. Like
Yeah, Charles.
how
I
it
mean,
feels without a
basically,
mask
yeah.
outside.
Lockdown for us was horrible. We had it like 3 times.
Yeah,
So like the first one was like just totally no contact with the outside, where
Really?
it was
For
really
how
strict. I think how long did we have our lockdowns? Like the first one was 3 months, 2 months,
6 months.
months. It was months.
3 to 4 months, I guess.
So you could only
Yeah.
go outside for medicine
You're
or
just
food?
locked inside.
Yeah.
We
And
had,
then there
Yes,
was
we are
like
only
we
allowed to
had
actually
it for
go out
3 times.
to get food.
we had a period at the very start of the pandemic when New York was the center of all infections in the United States, and it was very
Right.
scary. And there were lockdowns and curfews, and you couldn't go out after 8 p.m. and you were supposed to only go out for certain specific purposes. And but it didn't last as long. It wasn't 3 months of actual lockdown. Of course, it was 2 years of partial lockdown, and people who had to wear masks and double masks and triple masks and so on. But it was a frightening time. I lived near a park, so I could go out to the park without having to take transportation. And that at least gave me a little bit of fresh air. But
like a breather, yeah.
You had to be careful. But if you found a corner of the park where no one else was, you felt you could breathe. And so I had that good fortune. But there were plenty of times, many days in a row of not leaving the house. And one of the things that you'll find about a lot of writers is we tend to be introverts. So for me, the mere fact of not leaving the house, that was good from my point of view, because I like being indoors. I like staring at a computer screen and being in my head. So it wasn't as hard for me. But my daughter is much more of an extrovert, and for her it was, and of course she's a kid. She's full of energy and wants to move, and it was much harder for her. And I think most people like the outside world more than I do. I think if I if you told me I had to be indoors for the rest of my life, that would be not good.
Fine.
I don't welcome it, but I could deal with that. But a lot of people really hate that, and so I have a lot of sympathy. My daughter had to do school from home and by computer, and it's hard. It's hard on kids.
It has its pros and cons. I mean, I can relate to you. For creatives, you just need that quiet time and not having to do any social. And it's like, all right,
Exactly.
it's full. I have my space to myself, and it's beautiful. In the creative aspect, I do that. But with Ang saying, newfound appreciation when you go out. What are the things we're actually looking at? That's another part about what we have learned from the pandemic as well.
Yeah.
And also another thing is the efficiency of the collaboration, where people can work from remotely, and especially from you on the other end of the world, and Ang on the other side. You guys have been communicating smoothly to create such an incredible piece. I mean, years ago, like 5 to 10 years ago, we would have to fly over to one person's country and then have meetings, and then only something will come out. And now it's just emails. So I think that's
when I was in high school, there were games that you would play. I mean, there were role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons. You'd play them live with friends. But there was also something called Play by Mail. And you may not even have heard of Play by Mail. Play by Mail was a role-playing game, or even something like chess, where you would write down what your move was. You'd put it on a piece of paper, you'd stick it in an envelope, put a stamp on it, and put it in the mail. And it would take days or even a week or longer, depending on who you're writing to for it to arrive. And then that person would write down what his response was and mail it back to you. And there were people who played chess like this. I had a friend in high school who did that. He would say, I move my, queen's bishop to the following square. And then 2 weeks later would come the next move. I take your bishop with my rook. And it went on for months. What an onerous, horrible way to play a game. But people did it. That was their choice. And it worked for role-playing games too. It was like, you're in a spaceship, you're walking down the hall, suddenly a monster appears. What do? Well, I pull my phaser and I shoot at the monster. And then you put it in an envelope, you mail it away, and 2 weeks later you hear
oh my god.
So you hear that whether you actually get the monster or not.
By the time the monster gets shot, he dies of old age. But but people did this. There was no choice. And now, yes, what an extraordinary thing that we can work together on a piece of art. We can work together on a comic book and never physically be in the same room, but communicate sometimes 3-4 times in a single day, back and forth. The people who print the comics, the people who do the production work to prepare the comics for printing are in England. The people who print the comics, I think, are somewhere in the U.S. I think they're printed in the U.S. I'm not 100% sure. Possibly Canada.
Canada?
I think.
Canada? I think.
I think there was a printer in the U.S. that we wanted to use, but they were in a very religious state and run by a very religious person who said, I think issue 1 he was okay with, but then he opened
the second issue
to a certain page in the second issue, and I won't describe what happens on that page, but it was shocking to this man, and he said, I can't read this comic. And so I think we had to go to Canada for issue 2.
Okay.
Wow.
I'm intrigued. How shocking is this?
You're intrigued.
So, page when you get to it.
I'm meeting you tomorrow anyway, so I'll bring the book. I'll show you.
I hope you're not too embarrassed. No, I mean, one of the things that we set out to do was to tell an adult story, not adult in an exploitative sense, but adult in the sense that adults would watch and enjoy it. So when you see a crime movie, one of the great crime movies, it's not geared towards 13-year-old kids. There's nothing wrong with a story that is. Harry Potter is geared towards 13-year-old kids. But Ocean's 11 isn't, and LA Confidential isn't, and Basic Instinct wasn't. I'm not saying they were all good movies, but there's room for stories for young people and stories for grown-ups. And we always thought of Gun Honey as a story for grown-ups. And so, if you're Joanna Tan and you're a weapons expert and you use every tool in your arsenal to succeed, well, if you happen to be a very attractive woman, people might underestimate you because of that. You might be able to distract them because of that. And so one of the tools Joanna uses is her appearance. And we weren't shy about that. But the result is it is kind of a book for grown-ups.
So that actually comes to one of my questions that I'm actually interested to actually find out, right? Considering that this is an adult book, and I guess that both of you would like to actually keep it into the good taste format rather than going into the pornographic area that is actually too extreme. So how do you find it actually very challenged to actually keep it tasteful while still showing nudity? I mean, from Charles, your writer, how do you actually describe it that it's actually tasteful rather than very too explicit that it actually turned in? I mean, it just felt disgusting sometimes. It's because it's so bad.
Yeah, sure. I find nudity potentially very beautiful, and more so than violence, personally. And so I would rather see a beautiful character, male or female, without clothes on than see someone's hand get cut off or eyes get gouged out or brains get splattered on the wall. Now, if you're writing an action story, occasionally there will be violence. But as an example, I like Tarantino's movies, but sometimes they're just too gory for me.
Yeah,
I find some of the gore to be in poor taste. And that doesn't mean he's wrong to do it, but it's for a different audience than me. And so I would rather, watch a movie that has slightly more nudity and slightly less violence, but everyone's different. Anyway, we try to do it in good taste. I think it's all a question of choosing angles and so on. You can have the most explicit scene in the world, but if you see it from the right angle, it's not as graphic. It's not as explicit. I think there was probably only one page in the first 2 books. There were plenty of pages where people didn't have much clothing on, or any clothing in some cases. There's only one page that was actually sexual, where people were doing something that was sexual. And the angle was such that you couldn't see the piece that would get you banned in 20 countries. So I think you've done a wonderful job of walking that line. Sometimes I write a scene and I think, will this be embarrassing to Ang? Have I written something that is just so embarrassing that he'll say to me, why are we doing this? But it hasn't happened yet. So I'm very grateful.
I'm just curious if, Charles, you're just testing the boundary, testing the limit of Ang. How much can he take? Adding one straw at a time.
One stroke at a time. But the same with violence. There's one scene in the second sequence where it is a fairly graphic murder, and this person dies, and it's a little bloody. And we did show it. I mean, it's so exotic a method of death that you don't relate to it as something personally horrible, because nobody you've ever seen in real life has ever been killed in this particular way. It's so bizarre.
Okay.
But it's pretty graphic, but I think it's okay. I looked at the art and I thought, I think this works. I don't think anyone will be horrified by it. You probably know the scene I'm thinking of, Ang.
Yeah. And no real offense to the person depicted in the scene.
Right. We will not show that scene to you. But I think it's an exciting way. Like in a James Bond movie, you have somebody who's killed in some dramatic way. You don't
get crushed or something.
Yeah, exactly. They could get crushed or cut in half by a lightsaber or whatever. I mean, not in real world, but yeah, the more exotic and peculiar it is, the less real world it feels, and I think the more leeway you have to depict it a little bit more, because it's a little more comic booky. I think also, by the way, you can go further in a comic book than you can in a movie or TV show, because comics are inherently exaggerated. You could have a comic that's truly pure real world drama, and there are those sorts of comics, but I think anytime you have an action, adventure, crime comic, it's a little bit heightened. It's a little bit set in a world not quite ours. So Jason Bourne, James Bond, Fast and the Furious, can cars really go out through one window and across an empty space and through No, of course they can't do that. And so we have scenes where the action here is impossible to film, because in the real world it wouldn't work, but you still do it because it's fun.
So that's the whole beauty of comics.
Is that the reason why you allow certain car designs that I put in?
Yes.
Yeah, they're not always from the real world.
I think the cars are gorgeous. I worry about that too. Sometimes I say, she jumps out of a helicopter, and then I realize now you have to draw a helicopter. I don't know if you know how to draw a helicopter. How would you know? Or I say, they're getting into a police van that's used to carry prisoners from one location to another. And I think, oh my gosh, I've just made your life so hard. Now you have to figure out what a police van looks like. But I've never stumped you. Every time I've come up with anything, you've drawn it beautifully,
So we probably can actually show some of his very beautiful art.
Oh, that would be great. Yes, please show, please.
Yeah. Let me probably just show this, which I felt that it's actually very well executed in terms of how he actually draw the gun, as well as the cloth that's actually hiding the gun.
Yes, I love the vibration rings as the bullet passes through the air.
This is definitely this is actually familiar. That's something that we will actually see from like a manga series or maybe a manhwa series.
Yeah.
And I love the panels being distorted, that they're not rectangle. They're not rectangles.
As in the motion itself.
All right. So this is fully from Ang's direction and not from your direction.
Right. I described what action was happening in the scene. What there's a man who stands up from the water in a tank of some sort or a tub, and he has a gun on his hand, and there's a plastic bag concealing the gun so the gun won't get wet, and he fires through the plastic bag, and the plastic peels backwards as the bullets penetrated, and our hero survives, escapes, the gunfire, to avoid it, and the villains die. So I described that, but exactly, what the panels look like.
In terms of visuals, so it's fully Ang.
Fully Ang, and it's one of my favorite spreads in the whole first book.
Right.
Yeah, I made a mistake in this one.
Oh.
I think the mistake actually started from the page before that, which is here. Yeah, because we are Malay, right? And the person, or at least the person that's shooting, the shooter, actually uttered, is that what? Jatuh ke kiri, means that you fall to your left. But if I actually look at this, they are actually falling to the right.
Oh no! I didn't even notice that.
Pick this up?
Well, it was his left, not their left.
But
Yeah,
that is
yeah,
even
yes.
more confusing, isn't it?
That's true. You're right. You're right. Forget it. That was my explanation. Now, that's a good point. We should have flopped it. It's okay.
But it could
I
be
mean,
on her left.
I think I mean, this mistake probably just got picked up by the Malaysians or maybe the Indonesian or the Singaporean. I mean, only 3 countries will pick it up.
But they're 3 big countries. And what translated into
I'm not
English,
sure how easy for them to actually get gun honey at Indonesia.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, we've
And
been
in
talking
Malaysia
about
as
that.
well, actually.
I'm sorry.
I
You
mean,
can.
like, oh, okay.
So do you have other examples, other pages? Let's see other pages.
Yeah.
Do we have any from the new book?
Can I actually show some sample pages from the second series?
Please.
Yeah. So we have this. Maybe you would like to actually run through this because I'm not read it, so I have no idea what it is.
Sure. In the opening scenes of the new book, we see a woman dressed all in black with a motorcycle helmet over her head, and she infiltrates a mansion in Montana, and she comes in through the glass ceiling, and she's caught by the security guards, and she escapes. And at the end, we assume this is Joanna. We assume this is the title character of the book, Gun Honey, but it's not. It's actually someone else, because Joanna isn't blonde. Joanna doesn't have blue eyes. And when this woman in the motorcycle helmet has her faceplate shattered by a bullet, we see that she's blonde and has blue eyes. So it's not Joanna after all. It's somebody else doing the same kinds of things Joanna does. And what we're going to find out is this is the villain of the book, and she is impersonating Joanna. She is using Joanna's MO to commit certain kinds of crimes that Joanna will be blamed for. And so that's what this spread shows.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just loving the
and maybe you could also explain a little bit in terms of the approach of what Charles has actually explained in his script, and how do you actually make it into the visual that we have right now.
I had to finish this page for days.
From a deadline approach.
And there are so many books. I felt
there's so many books at the back.
Look at every book drawn. It breaks my heart. I will never do that to you again. I promise. We're not going to do that. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. I just felt bad that I made you draw so many books. So from now on, if they go, it's going to be a minimalist setting, and there's going to be one flower in a vase, and that's it.
Because I added the books in there myself. Initially, it was like half a rack. It was probably just for the bottom half. If you see the divider there, just above the head of the guards. So I fill in the books for the bottom half. Then I figured that, I don't know, she was supposed to be in the library of a rich guy's mansion, right? So I was like, wouldn't a rich guy's mansion have like literally a library of books? So I decided to fill the other half.
You were right.
And when it comes to inking, that was when I realized I probably shouldn't have filled the other half.
Oh, you should have actually just blackened most of
Slowly
it.
regretting it.
Right, shadows.
Add some shadow, not all the details.
So we won't do a fight scene in a supermarket with lots of canned food.
That probably would be quite a challenge.
That would be quite a challenge, right? I mean, things not to do. What are some other things that we shouldn't do?
Those are ideas.
So we are actually doing some art review as well, work review.
Right.
I was so worried about the colorist in this case, but I think I love the lighting here. But I was very worried that he would color every book differently.
Right.
Luckily, he did not.
I'm glad he did it the way he did it. It came out well. But
This is much better than what I envisioned.
Good. I'm glad. Yeah, Asifer Rahman does the colors, and he's also very, very good, very talented.
And
I think he was probably cursing as well. Like, why is there so many?
Asian, right?
Probably. I'm sorry?
Is he an Asian?
Yeah, he was in Bangladesh, and now is in Canada.
Ah, okay. So it's more towards your time zone.
Currently more towards my time zone. I think it may be a temporary thing. I think he may be in school. We're taking courses of some sort, and then it's possible he'll return to Asia. I'm not sure, but right now he's in our time zone or close to it.
Right. So there are just some praises that are actually coming in pertaining these particular double page splash. Like, my God, the sequential work is incredible. I can feel my eye being led across the page. And then Pi actually mentioned that would love to have the OA for this particular page.
What do you do with your original art? I never
maybe it's also a question for maybe Ang as well as Charles, that considering that you actually admire Ang's work, right? Do you collect some of his work? Because considering that he's doing
I would love to, but literally until this instant, it never even occurred to me to ask what you do with your original art.
We are also curious.
Because if we were living on the same street, I'd go over to your house and I'd pick it up. But we live so far apart. We only exchange things digitally.
I keep it like this. This guy
in the portfolio.
Yeah. And,
so probably you can actually keep it as a museum artifact.
Wow.
So
and what paper do you use? What paper do you use, and what size is that? Looks huge. Seems to be A3 size. Okay. It is actually standard American size.
This is basically what I use.
Which is actually 11 times 19, right? I believe.
Yeah.
Drawing book.
That's great.
200 GSM. Especially important for me since my style is very scratchy.
Okay.
So
have you considered using Bristol, which is actually archivable? That's what I heard. Bristol, but it's more expensive, I believe.
Yeah, I heard it's more expensive.
Yeah.
So
because considering something that we need to also pay in mind that in Malaysia our humidity is actually very high.
Yeah.
So that may actually affect the artwork in terms of how you store it and whatnot.
Yeah, that's true.
Get boxing, mold, and whatnot.
Really
some of the members of the community also collects original artwork, like things that is actually from the United States, or in fact, I myself actually have some as well. But I'm just curious. What's your plan of this? Are you going to keep it? Are you going to sell it, or what?
I'll probably have to keep it for the time being. I didn't really have any plan so far. I mean, regarding Gun Honey, of course, all the pages they are the property of Titan Publishing. So those definitely aren't for sale. Whereas the other originals of other artwork that I do, I've not considered selling so far.
Okay. So maybe for us to actually get some Ang's artwork, will be to commission him.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably. But I haven't thought much of commission also, because in terms of commission, the customers will probably get the digital version of the artwork rather than original. Because if they want original, I have to figure out how to send it to them, right? So
we can actually talk offline. I do personally have some experience on that, so we can actually talk offline.
That's great.
I can actually give you some advice.
Side business running here, Charles.
Pi just actually mentioned that
free to
it's
sell
2
the
hours
original
away
art.
from people. You probably can drive over, so you need not actually ship it.
Oh, and you're just Pi says just 2 hours drive.
2 hours drive from Ipoh. Is he from KL?
Yes, he is based out of KL. Yeah.
All right.
I think you've got yourself customers waiting in line right now.
Like I actually mentioned to you during the test call, right? So if you just so happen to be in KL, I can always organize something to actually allow your fans to actually meet you up, get their book signed. Don't ask how they actually get it in. Probably just smuggle it in.
Right. We don't need to know.
Especially on issue 2 on that particular page. The splash page.
The splash page, as we call it, for more than one reason. But
yeah.
For Charles, do you have like any plans on coming over to Asia anytime soon?
I would love to. I haven't been to Asia probably for about 15 years. I went. I was in China and Japan. There was a World Science Fiction Convention in Yokohama in Japan, and my wife, who's a novelist named Naomi Novik, was nominated for a Hugo Award, and we went together. which was a wonderful experience. I couldn't stay as long as she could. She stayed in Japan a bit longer. But I've never been to Malaysia. I've never been to Singapore, and I'd love to. And I think the big excuse for me to go will be if the TV show gets made.
Okay.
So if that happens, I'll be there in a heartbeat. And even if it doesn't happen, I'm going to try to find some excuse to go. It's just
come over. You'll be actually amazed with.
Well, thank you. I would love to.
Have you been to Malaysia? Charles, have you been to Malaysia at all?
Never. I've only seen it on TV. You know, that's all my knowledge of Malaysia is from things like The Bridge. So of course, I assume that it's very much, it's like if you only know New York from Martin Scorsese movies, you think New York's very different from the real thing. So I'm sure the real Malaysia is very different from my imagined Malaysia, which is all about people chasing each other, running between piles of crates, and going up on the roof and jumping off.
We're way much more chilled out. Trust me.
Okay, we are more chilled. We don't run too much.
But there's lots of
we have too much food here for us to consume that we don't run.
I'm happy to be on that side of the fence. I would love to eat and not run. That would make me happy.
We have actually beautiful beaches. We have you can actually do a lot of things here. We have jungles that you can go into trekking. We have beaches that you can actually just chill, get your sun.
Well, one of the questions. So when I started writing the new book, I needed to have Joanna take time off, and I wanted her on an island where she could have privacy. And I went to the producers and asked them, where should she be? Where should this island be? Because I also needed her to be within a relatively short distance of Johor. And Langkawi felt like it was kind of far away.
Yes,
I solved that with a helicopter. So they get from one to the other with a helicopter. But the original suggestion was to put her on one of the little islands on the east.
Yes.
And I don't remember the names of each island, but I researched all the islands I could find. And the problem was they were so small that she would stand out. You can't be on that island and not be known. So
being noticed
for you. Yeah, the little islands. So there are some that have incredible resorts that are ridiculously expensive that you can only stay in if you're very, very, very wealthy. And the whole island has one hotel and one restaurant, and that's it. And,
I know.
But they look beautiful. So if the TV show gets made, maybe we're all going to have to go to one of those islands and stay there for a week.
Yes, you guys actually should.
Ang and I
can actually just do another interview session on. We will actually offer ourselves to do some interview session as well.
Excellent. Yes.
Live from the beachfront.
Exactly. But I joking aside, I would like to come, and I'm hoping to be able to do it in the next year or so. Probably not this calendar year, but hopefully in 2023.
All right. Well, besides foods and beautiful beaches, I mean, we have a lot of cons as well that goes on. One of the closest one, especially like we have Singapore Comic Con.
Okay.
There's a huge cult following, for sci-fi, for pulp fantasy. So it'll be amazing, as a writer like you to come on by, and I'm sure a lot of fans will be waiting for you.
I would love to do that. So what time of year is it? I know San Diego's July usually. New York is
Singapore Comic Con is actually on the 10th and 11th of December.
Okay. Yeah, it's usually at the end of the year, right before Christmas.
Okay. So possibly even this year, but more likely next year. I have a feeling that planning a trip, that big a trip, is going to take more time.
Yeah, it also take out
but maybe
majority of your days.
Gun hunting should be done. Well, we'll see. I mean, right now, you're in the beginning stage of thinking. So we'll have to see if we can get it done in time. But the intention is for the 4 issues of Blood for Blood to be out by December. I think August, September, October, November. So even if we're late, they should be out by December. So I don't know how likely it is that I can be out there, but maybe Ang, if you felt like it, you could go.
So Ang, if you're actually interested to actually join us, I already got a booth that I actually intend to actually exhibit some of my some of my artist partners. So if you're actually interested, you're welcome to actually join us. So
yeah, sure.
Totally up to you, but if you would enjoy
it.
I'll see you guys in SCGCC then.
Another thing that we can actually talk offline, that's for sure.
Right.
Aside from shipping the original hour and whatnot. Right. So yeah.
I think like getting back to time, I think how much more have we got? About 10
We
minutes
have
left?
another 14 minutes. I mean, if you
Oh,
actually
40.
go end it by the dot, but it seems like time just flies, right? When
It
we
does.
actually having fun.
It's fun
So,
to talk about these things. It's great. And,
yeah.
it's fun to talk with people who enjoy them. It's I can talk to people in my world of publishing, and even in publishing, there are people who say, I only read traditional books. I don't read comic books. And there are people who look down their noses at comic books. I've never understood that. Almost everyone reads comic books as a kid. Why do they stop? It's not because there aren't good comics.
They outgrew it. Some of them actually says that they outgrew comics because those are for kids.
Right.
So they want
they think
something
it's
more
for kids.
sophisticated. They
But
don't want.
Yeah, no, that's it exactly. They remember certain kinds of comics that were for kids, but they don't say, I don't watch television. Television's for kids.
Exactly.
There's television for kids.
Exactly.
There's television for adults. They don't say, I don't read books. They don't say, I don't go to movies. But some people say, I don't read comics. I've been mystified, always mystified by that, because the truth is, an adult comic can be as much fun as an adult TV show, a movie for adults, a book for adults. So I think people are missing out if they stop reading comics. It's just a bizarre thing to stop. It's like saying, I used to eat ice cream as a child, but that's for children. I don't eat ice cream anymore. Or, I used to eat dessert. I don't eat dessert anymore. It's okay if you don't like dessert, but if you liked it, why would you stop eating it? I mean,
I guess that goes back to, with what technology, has pretty much taken over, simple things. Like if you're talking about publishing, how print is slowly dying, or not a lot of people, and especially I see it in the younger gen, I see it in my students, they don't like reading anymore. They don't even read comics. They just watch cartoons or animations. And a lot of the inspiration is like, oh, I'm watching YouTube shorts or stuff from TikTok, and
the
that's
short
where they're
attention
getting
span. But then
really
again,
short
comics
attention.
will be a perfect medium, isn't it? It's like 24 pages.
And so,
You tell a very fun story, so you just need to actually flip through 24 pages. Like
yeah,
you
that's
probably
the thing.
can finish it in 10 minutes, but you have a very nice enjoyment of it.
Yeah, I guess like the idea of having to read through something and comics is beautiful in a sense where it's not just about pictures. Like, with anime and manga, you see a lot of action based where it's a lot of really full on seeing all the effects. Whereas when you're looking more towards Western comics, it's really about the marriage, like how you said, the marriage between the words and also the visuals and seeing how it flows. And it takes a lot of some sort of intellect, into really appreciating a comic and seeing how it goes, it flows. It's not just pictures, like how you see in picture books.
Right.
So I think I can sort of understand the fact, like how adult comics are probably not really being accepted because they feel like it's a bit heavy. I have to use more of my brain to really understand the flow of things. They just want straight on plain pictures and that's it. And that's why people are moving on towards, with a shorter attention span, moving more towards TV and TikTok and stuff like that. So,
there's no question that you're right. I mean, when I look at my daughter, that sort of thing.
That's just personal opinion.
But there's a but. So there is a whole generation of kids who grew up reading Harry Potter who might not have read a book otherwise. And having read Harry Potter, they moved on to Rick Riordan, and they moved on to Artemis Fowl, and they moved on to Keeper of the Lost Cities. And then as they get older, they move on to The Hunger Games and Twilight. It's not every kid, but there is a generation of kids that suffered the pleasure of reading. And then there's also the fact that online communications, although now there's a certain amount of vocal and audio communications, there's a generation of kids who write texts and who write emails. And texts admittedly have lots of abbreviations and emojis, but there's still words. And so there is this generation of kids, as much as they like TikTok, they still text each other 100 times a night. And so there is some comfort with the world of language, with the world of writing. And I'm not going to give up hope. I think there's still the chance that they can learn to expand from one to the other. Somebody who's willing to take a dip in a wading pool might eventually swim in the ocean. And any comfort with water whatsoever, I'll settle for somebody who brushes her teeth. That's enough water for me. And I will make sure that one day you're swimming in the ocean. That's my goal as a writer, to give you a story so irresistible that even if you think you're not going to want to read it, just give it a page or two. And if it doesn't hook you, I didn't do my job. But if it does hook you, your job is to keep reading. That's all you have to do. It's not hard. Turn the page. Just turn the page.
And it's already proven through Gun Honey, #1 and non-premier.
Well, I mean, Gun Honey, of course, is not, it's not doing the numbers that Harry Potter does, not yet. But I'm grateful for whatever number of thousands of people or tens of thousands of people have read it, or more. I don't even know how many, because, of course, you learn something about how many copies get sold, but you don't know how many people read each copy. People pass these things around. So I'm hopeful that over the coming years, more people will know Joanna. And, even if they know her originally from the TV show, hopefully they'll pick up one of Ang's and my pieces of old-fashioned, physically drawn art. By the way, Ang, one of the other things that drew me to you was that when I saw photographs of your pages, in the edges of the photograph, I could see rulers, pens, and I knew you were doing this with your actual hands. You were doing this, wasn't digital. And that made me so happy. So happy.
I think I have a photo of that. No.
Wow.
These the one on the lower bottom, the bottom, the ruler that you actually showed.
Yeah. So
traditional.
I get the measurements from Mr. Charles. Titan Comics sent me some measurements regarding the pages, and I try to adapt it to A3 size paper. And those were the usual measurements that I go for after issue 1 or 2. I'm not sure. Probably issue 1. So basically, those were the lines that a penciler should not cross. Right.
Oh, let's see his work that he's bringing.
So can I show page 2?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Yes. Page 2. So like this outer line here is the line that is the cutoff line.
The bleed.
Right.
Yeah, generally would ignore anything here if they wanted to do. So we have to draw everything within this inner line. But sometimes, as you can see here, I break the rules. So this is generally going to be ignored. But since I know it's going to be ignored, so the details here are not really that important.
Right. We have not had too many cases where something got trimmed off at the edges.
Yeah. That was the great thing about Titan Comics. They try to they try to salvage as much as they can.
Okay.
Even when I draw really like off the page,
close to the edge.
Yeah, especially the establishing scene, like the panel 1. Like if Mr. Charles said, "Hey, we are moving to say Italy," so show a building about Italy. So I would fill up even right up to the top of the page if I can, because it's the establishing shot, right? So nothing important there other than the buildings, and people know where the scene is taking place. So I know even if they try to cut off some of the art, it's going to be okay. It's going to be visually nice.
Right.
So I kind of break the rule quite a number of times.
It's true. The trick is to put anything that can't be cut off has to be inside. But anything that if it got cut off, that's okay. That can be at the edge.
So you need to sacrifice some artwork.
Sometimes there's one page in I think it's issue 1 of the new book. There's one page where Joanna is chasing someone onto a film set. And by the way, one of the reasons we did the film set was to give Ang an excuse to draw. There it is.
Yes, this is the one.
We wanted, if you are able to draw like Frazetta, we need to have a barbarian in fur and a woman in a fur bikini. And so Joanna is being chased through a soundstage where they're making a Conan movie or something like that. And the page before this, which you may or may not have, I don't remember. There's one panel where she's firing a gun. Not the page before this in the comic, but so you may not have a copy of it, but there's a page where she's firing a gun, and the gun is right up against the right edge of the page. And I think the sound effect goes click, click to indicate she's run out of bullets. And I think there was only room for one click. I think the art says click, click, but we only get one click. But that's okay. One click is enough clicks. You know, it's empty. That's why it goes click.
Yeah, I know the panel.
Yeah, you know the panel. So that was the one case I can think of where it got cut off, but I think it works fine. And this was fun. An action scene on the set of a movie. You know, with a wizard and a barbarian, and
the thing is how much of details is actually drawn in terms of the film crew, the behind the scenes stuff like the mics and all that. It's just so mind-boggling. Like, how can
I love it?
I mean, how much of detail has Ang actually spent doing this? This particular panel.
This is definitely shorter than the library scene.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, because the action scenes below it, they don't take that much time.
There's a lot of close-ups.
I'm curious now, right? Looking at this, do you do tracing, or everything is it just based on measurement and just using your eye looking at references? Because a lot of this seems to be very accurate, I would say. It's almost like photograph that you just trace on top.
I have references though. In fact, Mr. Charles often send me references, so I just use that as a guide and draw it on the paper.
It's amazing. Yeah, looking forward to actually see the actual print so that we can actually just zoom further down into detail. Is that something that we can actually share in the community, at least for them to actually have a look? I have the opportunity to. I'm lucky to actually have the high resolution. Of course, I'm not sharing the high resolution, but can I actually share like a piece of it to the community to actually excite them?
How many people are on the committee?
5,000.
Oh my gosh, that's a lot. Yeah, you know, I think right. Don't give the high res, you know, printable.
I'll probably just cut some of it just to actually just show them.
Yeah, that's exciting. I love the idea that thousands of people will get a taste of the issue. They want to see the whole thing. Of course, they have to wait for it to be printed.
Yes, of course. I'm just this is actually more towards the teasing, just to tell them that what they are missing out if they don't actually really.
Sure. That sounds good.
Right. I think we're almost down to our closing.
Yeah, we're actually almost out of time. But probably we have Julius has actually a last question. Maybe this is for Ang. Because he's an aspiring artist, right? So do you use any particular scanner to scan your pencils? And I believe that the first questions is that do you scan your pencil before you ink it?
Yeah, I do scan my pencils because Mr. Charles requested the pencils, usually in TIFFs and JPEGs. And then I ink
it. But it's more for JPEG, it's not high resolution, right? Do you keep like a high resolution files of your pencil before you ink your pages?
Yeah, other than the original output by the scanner is a Mustang brand. Mustang. So it is pretty big. And you can definitely can scan A3 paper without having to stitch it back using software. As for software, I don't use Photoshop, but I do use GIMP just to adjust the, how do you call it, the threshold, or in a way similar to the contrast, and just to clean up some of the dust particles that sometimes can get it can get trapped onto the scanner bed, and even if you clean it thoroughly, sometimes there will be a few dots here and there. So I check for those dots before I save and send the file to Mr. Charles.
Okay.
Probably something, Charles, you should actually consider asking Ang to actually record some of these as behind the scenes stuff.
The process of it.
I definitely like the idea of doing some behind the scenes things. You know, in each issue, we have a bit of back matter. We have a little article at the back, and we haven't decided yet what all the back matter articles for the new book will be. So we could definitely do some behind the scenes art of some sort. We should talk about that.
That'd be so cool. Okay, any last words probably to the audience, like what can the readers expect with this upcoming issue?
Well, you know, we wanted to put Joanna through a trial. We wanted to make things hard for her. It's no fun to watch somebody just cakewalk through an easy adventure. And so we decided we would give her an opponent who is physically larger than her, physically stronger than her, hates her, wants to see her suffer, and will learn why. And probably is a better chess player than she is. And so the question is, faced with this kind of enemy, can Joanna even survive, never mind triumph? And I think it's a very different kind of book than the first one because of that. Joanna's on the run, and Joanna's in trouble, and she has to react and respond to that. And I hope people enjoy it just as much as the first one. But I think it's definitely going to push Joanna to the limits of her endurance, and we will see what that means.
Yeah, I remember that. Charles, you actually mentioned that Joanna doesn't kill in.
Well, she does by the end of the first book. She blows up that island. She doesn't make a habit of killing. She's not a professional assassin. She supplies people with guns, and she understands they use them, but she's not the one who pulls the trigger, except in the first book when it really means a lot to her. When she's got a personal reason to do it, she does actually kill or assist somebody else in killing. In the new book, I'm trying to think if she kills anyone. I think because she doesn't have quite the same personal stake. I don't think she herself is pulling the trigger, but there are definitely people who die.
Yeah.
So,
result of what she did.
Yeah.
Yeah, even if she pulled the trigger in the second issue, it was to prevent something from happening. So saving a life or just trying to screw with the plan of the bad guys. So no killing by Joanna.
No killing by Joanna in this book.
In suspense.
So she's not like James Bond.
Will it happen?
Right. And now I think maybe in the third one she'll kill a lot of people. We'll have to see.
Well.
Goes on a killing spree.
Probably not. But you know, we'll see. Give her a good enough.
Okay.
It seems like Julius just offered himself as an apprentice for Ang. Well, if you actually happen to actually requires an assistant to draw those books at the background, just talk to Julius.
Wow.
Julius is an amazing artist, so yeah, I think that's
Julius is also an amazing artist. I can actually share some of his work with you.
Yeah, sure.
That'd be great. That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right.
So really appreciate that both of you actually spend 2 hours, in fact, more than 2 hours, in fact, that we really have enjoyed our time. Yeah, and really that like Charles, what you actually said, we probably need more time, but I guess that you're hungry now. You should go for breakfast and
brunch.
A little bit of both. I'm very grateful that you had us on. This is actually the first time Ang and I ever have done an interview together, and I'm so glad we got to do that.
Yeah, I'm also glad that this happened, because I guess that it happens for a reason, right? I found out that it's a Malaysian, and then I saw that the second series is actually upcoming. Hence, that I actually wrote an email to you, Charles.
That's right.
I think that those things everything just align, allow us to this session to happen.
Yeah,
and really
was
appreciate all the viewers and also the members that's actually contributing and commenting. Hopefully that we can actually do more of this in the future. Who knows? There's a new series or spin-off that's actually mentioned in one of the members that say maybe a spin-off or perhaps a crossover for some of our other Titans IPs. Who knows, right?
That's a good idea. We should think who should Joanna cross over with. Any suggestions are welcome. Of course, it's going to be
someone just mentioned James Bond, but yeah.
I could see the easiest thing for a crossover is if it's another Titan comic, but that would mean it would be Doctor Who or Blade Runner, and I'm not sure either of those quite work. Although
you can actually start figuring out about the time traveling stuff or the interdimension.
That's it, exactly.
Stuff.
Doctor Who and Gun Honey would be an interesting combination.
Thank you. Yeah. So with that, really that we appreciate both of your time, and hopefully that we can actually hear more. And
Thank
really, we
you.
are actually very excited to actually see the next adventures of our Joanna Tan, as well as whatever that actually have in stock are coming from you both.
Thank you so much. This was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice
And
day.
also to our
Bye-bye.
MYCC fans, thank you. We'll be having this streamed over again live, and just follow in MYCC Play and YouTube, and also the replays at Play Exhibition. So thank you, everyone. Have a good morning and good night.
Have a good
And
night.
we'll see you guys soon. All right,
Bye.
bye-bye.
Thank you. See you guys. Bye.